Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Palikari Business Podcast. I'm your host, Abby, joined by my co-host and husband, Nick. Palikari is a Greek word that means a person who has achieved great things beyond their years. On this podcast, we hope to help you achieve great things by having conversations with successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and influencers from all walks of life. If you want to learn how to start a successful business, grow in leadership skills, or receive practical encouragement on chasing your dreams, this is the podcast for you. Larissa is a best-selling author with works ranging from science fiction to self-help. She is the founder of Next Page Publishing, where she helps people write, edit, market, and publish their own books so that they can supercharge their marketing game, sign more clients, and own their accountability and credibility. This is a really interesting episode all about marketing your business with your story to help you connect with your audience on a deeper level and drive traffic to your business. This episode is so good. We absolutely loved it, so let's get into it. Larissa, can you just share a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am the CEO of Next Page Publishing Incorporated, and I started the business on the backs of wanting to help my fellow entrepreneurs write books and tell their stories and grow their brands based off of who they are as people. And I kind of got onto this mission, if you will, because when I'm ex-corporate, and being ex-corporate meant that I put a lot of myself aside, and I didn't, that personal branding doesn't exist when you're corporate. So when I stepped out into the entrepreneur world, I was seeing so much of that corporatism still living in people's businesses. And it was just, I wanted people to tell their stories. I wanted them to build their brand on who they are as people and the experiences they've gone through. Because in my experience, stories are what sells. Stories are what converts clients and brings clients into your doors that you connect with. So that's what I started my business on. I'm actually a sci-fi writer. That's my background. And I saw this huge need in the entrepreneur world to help people grow their business on their story.
That's awesome.
It's cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. First of all, that's really cool that you write sci-fi. I personally love reading sci-fi. But so was that kind of, you're transitioning from writing fiction into helping people in the business world. Was that transition difficult at all? Or did you find that you learned things along the way? Or what was that experience like?
Yeah. So with my sci-fi book, I self-published through a hybrid publisher. And what I found in that process was that I wish it had been more of a teaching environment. I wish they had told me more of how to do these certain things so that when it came to my second, third, fourth, fifth books, I understood what it meant to go through the process. And so when I started my business, I, made a little vow to myself that this would be a teaching environment. This would be very collaborative. It would be teamwork. And what I find with the people who go through my program is they come out feeling so empowered that they can do it themselves. And that's what I wish I had from my first book. And what made the second books, it made me feel like I had never done this before because I didn't know how to do it. And so I had this huge learning curve to go through. But the actual transition to teaching people, no, that wasn't difficult for me. It was the initial learning curve that was the hard part.
Yeah. That makes sense. So why do you think a business owner should write a book?
Yeah, I think a little bit what I touched on before of stories are what sells. And I think a lot of people that are entrepreneurs are coming from a corporate background where they're not used to having to put themselves so wholly into something. And if we don't adopt a new mindset into our entrepreneurial journeys, we get lost, we get burnt out, we get really bogged down in the business side of it and forget why we started in the first place. And a book, the way I do it in my programs, we start from the very basics. We start with who are you writing to? What are you writing about? What is your mission? And I find that even people that have been entrepreneurs for a long time, when they go through these exercises, they're reinvigorated, they're refocused, they go through such a growth period in the first 2 weeks of the program because they're getting so much more clear on what they're doing. So a book isn't just a marketing tool. It is the ability to get clear on your business's goals, get clear on your why and your story and who you serve. It has marketing abilities. Like that is one of the ways we use the book is to, charge more for your services, bring in more clients, be able to market yourself better. It's a business card that you've been handed a business card before and you're like, yes, thank you, this is great. In the trash it goes. Nobody throws out a book. Right? You don't throw out a book. You read the book, or at very least it sits on your shelf and is a constant reminder of that person you met that one time that wrote a book.
That's true.
That's really good, and I love that you put it like it's a business card that people won't throw out, and because that makes so much sense. And I never would have thought about it that way, because I know that right now, especially business owners, are really encouraged to create content like for social media or to write blog posts and things. But writing a book would give you such, like you were saying, would give yourself as a business owner such a holistic and whole understanding of not only who you're serving, but what you're offering to them. And I feel like that would give you a really good grasp on what you do. Because a lot of people ask, like, oh, what do you do? What's your business about? And if you've written a book, you would probably have a better understanding than most people who have a business about what you actually do and who you're actually serving. So I really liked that. That was a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets you to think about all those small things that on the surface level might not seem to matter that much, but they really do matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we do very early in the program is we write a vision statement, and the vision statement is 10 words or less. So you get really clear on what it is that you do and who you serve. So it's not an elevator pitch anymore. It's a 10 word statement, and it is crystal clear on what you do.
That's really good. Do you, when people come to you or you have a new client, do you ever have people who say like, oh, I don't really have a story to tell, or my brand doesn't really have anything that I could put into words like that, or a book? Do you have people who kind of struggle with that concept at first?
Typically, the people that come to me struggle with knowing what part of their story to put out there. And we are all very diverse. We've all gone through a lot. We all have very checkered past sometimes. And it's hard to know as business owners, what part of you do you put out there? What part of your story will build your brand? And that's what I see the most often. The people that come to me, I have had the odd few of like, I really want a book, but I don't know what to write about. But it's not that they don't think they have a book in them. It's just that they don't know which part of the book to come forward with. So, and that's the part of figuring out your why behind your business. What is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And that is the part of the story that you put forward.
Yeah.
That's really good.
The other benefit that I see from this too is not only if they don't read it, is it a constant reminder, but if they do read it, they have such a big connection with you off of that it's like working with you is like a no-brainer, right? Like, oh, I know this person. I've read all about them. So, I spent hours reading about their lives and how this all came to be. So that's the first person you're going to think of when you need whatever service it is that they provide. So,
yeah. I know, like Abby, you mentioned blogs and social media posts, and those just have, like, in my opinion, zero staying power. You read a blog, you would read for a couple of minutes, but a social media post or a video, it's gone within 30 seconds, right? There's and it never comes back. It never comes back across your feed. Whereas that book, like you just mentioned, Nick, it sits on your shelf. You sit with it for hours. You think about it after you've put it down, right? And yeah, you feel like you know this person, and you're going to know immediately whether you want to work with them or not.
Yeah, it builds that credibility. And that's like one of the most important things about having a business, is trying to build credibility so people want to hire you. So that's an awesome way to do that. So kind of piggybacking off this then, obviously we talked about one aspect where the book will help you grow your business through building credibility, and it has that staying power. But what are some other benefits you see of writing a book that will help grow a business?
Yeah, so there's two ways. that I like to mention, generally speaking. And the first one is for those that come with a program already in place. So they've been maybe doing this for a couple of years. They have fairly decent revenue coming in, and they're serving close to their ideal number of clients. And what I find with people that have programs already in place is that they sometimes take for granted what it is that they're teaching. And it can kind of start to feel redundant and stagnant, and like they're just saying the same thing over and over again. And that can get very boring as a coach, as an educator, as a service provider, whatever it is that you're doing. Repetition is typically the death of a business because it gets boring. What the book will do is it will make you look at what you have in a new light. Because quite often, these coaches particularly, they have video programs with workbooks. And video versus book, the way you have to display yourself and explain the information is completely different. Because with video, you have things like tone and body language. You don't have that in a book. So you have to be able to articulate it in a different way so that your audience understands what you're trying to tell them. And what I find with these people that already have programs, is that they start to look at it in a new way because they're describing it differently. And then they're thinking, this is better. I like this. I like where this is going. They start researching different avenues, different strings to pull. And by the end of the book, they have a new program because they're so invigorated. They're so excited about what they've put in their book. They think this is the best way, that I should have been doing this all along. And that life is just breathed back into their programs and their services. So that's the one for the people that already have programs. My second and very close favorite, if not equal, is the people that don't have programs or that are in flux, in transition. I just met with a woman yesterday who, she was a yoga teacher for 25 years. She had yoga studios, and now she's making a shift into corporate mindset work. And we were having a lot of conversations about how she doesn't know what that's going to look like. She doesn't have a program yet. She doesn't know what her deliverables are. She doesn't even know what her promise is yet. And we were talking about in the first 3 weeks of the book program, that is exactly what you do. You get clear on what it is you're offering, the process you're taking people through, and who you're serving. So the people that don't have programs, they are from ground up building it. And that's how I built my business. I built my business without a program, and I wrote my book first. And I got so much clarity on who I was going to serve and how I was going to serve them. And then all I had to do was market my book. And the leads started coming in because they liked what I was saying. They liked the way I taught. And that converted directly for me.
That's
that
awesome.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that is really good. So then I guess something that I was wondering then, for instance, say somebody's a mechanic. What sort of topics would a mechanic write about in a book? Would they write about car maintenance? Would they write about how does somebody determine what is the best topic to write about for their business?
So the first thing we would do before we pick a topic is pick who we're going to write to. And if you don't have clarity on who you're writing to, then your book is going to talk to no one. It's kind of like that. If you don't pick who you're talking to, you talk to no one. So this mechanic, for example, who is he talking to? Is he talking to new car owners? Is he talking to experienced car owners that are doing modifications on their vehicles? Is he talking to the soccer mom who just needs to keep her vehicle running? Like who is he talking to? And then he gets clear on what his message is. So let's say he's talking to the mom who just needs to keep her van running or her SUV running. He's going to include things like regular maintenance, oil change, windshield wiper top-ups. When the check engine light comes on, who do you call? That's what he's going to cover. It's going to be very specific to her and what she needs from that moment. If he's talking about modifications to a sports car, totally different audience, totally different message. So it really depends on who they're talking to, which is why that's where we start.
That makes a lot of sense. That's what I know that we were encouraged to too when we started our business, was come up with your ideal customer profile. Like, who are you marketing to? But I love the way that you're approaching it with the book, because I think if I had started with the mindset of I'm going to write something in length about who I'm serving and what I'm doing for them, I think it would have helped me understand a lot better what we're actually doing.
Yeah, and it helps you to actually determine a niche, right, to work in, because if you go too broad, then it's like the jack of all trades is an expert of none, right? So it's like it helps you kind of narrow it down and say, okay, this is who I'm serving and this is who I can serve best. And that's a good just business mindset in general. So so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, before somebody jumps in and starts doing this, what are some things you think, aside from what we've talked about understanding who your ideal client is and everything, what are some important things to understand when going into writing a book like this, even if it's just more of the technical aspects or the practical things?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people think of writing a book, they get very overwhelmed by the idea of writing a book. And I just participated in a collaboration book where my whole chapter is about the mindset of writing a book. And when I wrote my sci-fi book, my first book, I didn't know I was writing a book until I was like 15,000 words in. Like, it never even occurred to me that that's what I was doing. And that, that's a 90,000 word book. Like, it's big. And then when I went to write my business book, which is considerably smaller, I had such a hard time writing it because all of a sudden I knew I was writing a book. And that idea was like so overwhelming that it was a struggle to sit down on the first few chapters, because it was like, oh my gosh, I have so far to go. And then I just started breaking it into like, okay, I'm just going to write on this topic today. Don't worry about the whole thing. Don't worry about the end game. Just one topic at a time. And in the program, after, like you said, after we've done the ideal reader stuff and the vision and the mission statements and all of that, we move into outlining. And specifically in nonfiction, one of the best things you can do for yourself is create an outline with some details. Because what I find with nonfiction is you have it in your head. You know generally what you want to say. It's just putting it in order and stop jumbling it in your head, because all these ideas are running together. You're like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. Put it down on paper, follow a structure, understand what books in your niche or your genre look like, and then jot some ideas down so that when you do come up against that writer's block, you do come up against that overwhelm, you can look at your list and say, I'm going to write about this today. That's it. It's super simple. This is the one thing I'm going to pick up today. And if you like checklists, then this is the perfect thing for you. But if you find you're getting overwhelmed, just the one thing, pick one thing that you're going to do today and go for it.
That's really good.
Yeah. I have a question. What would you say to someone that maybe it's not that they don't know what to write about, but they just think that they can't write? Like, they just say, I have no talent for writing. So what would you encourage them, or would you say, oh, you're right, don't write a book?
It's so good because people come to me and sometimes they've had this dream of writing a book for their entire life. Like, as a child, they knew they were going to write a book. And I'm actually going to use my husband as an example for this. He has always wanted to write a book. He is an Olympian athlete. He's top tier, and he's always wanted to write a sports book. But in grade 4, his teacher told him his story was bad. And so he has forever, and not even just your story is bad, but that story his teacher continued to use for years as an example of what not to do. So like, the emotional scarring on him as a child has fed over into his confidence as an adult. So first, I would ask you to look at where that fear is coming from, where that thought of, I can't do this, that's probably based on feedback that you got as a child. That's my guess. Or maybe you got it in through college, whatever, in your school years, you got feedback at some point that said, you're not a good writer. And my challenge to that would be, says who? Because I have read amazing books, and I have read really crappy books, and they are still published and they are still out in the world, but it is my opinion that makes those books crappy. It is my expectation. So that teacher that told you you're not a good writer, that friend that told you this isn't a good story, that's their opinion. It does not mean there isn't a reader for your book. So for those people that come to me and they're like, I really want to write a book, but I'm not a good writer. It's like, okay, who says who? And I bet you I can prove you wrong. I bet I can prove there is a place for your story in this world. And then if that still doesn't work, we offer ghostwriting. If they really can't get over the mindset of I can't write, but I have a story inside me. It's like, all right, come on over. We'll write the story for you. And that works sometimes.
I love that.
At that point, it's probably they don't want to write as well.
Yeah,
It's probably a little
lot
bit of it.
Yeah, the ghostwriting is like, I don't have the time. And sometimes it's riddled with that little bit of fear, but a lot of times it's I don't have the time.
That actually made me think of another question. I'm assuming, so you're working with these people to write these books. Do you see a lot of mistakes that a lot of people make when they're first writing it or they're starting out? And how do you, what mistakes do you see that are pretty common for beginners writing these books for their business? And how do you fix those mistakes?
Lack of clarity on, we are touching on this so many times, on who they're serving and what their message is. Those are the two big things, especially in the first few chapters of a book. You can really get an idea if this person is dialed in on what they're trying to say. And I am guilty of this, especially in fiction writing. My first few chapters are typically all over the place, and my editor has just an absolute heyday going through them of like, what the heck are you trying to say here? Because it's scattered. You're formulating all these ideas. You're facing that mountain of the idea of writing a book, which is why it's so important in nonfiction to have that outline. And what I often recommend is most fiction books start with an introduction. Sorry, nonfiction start with an introduction. Write your introduction last. That is one of the best things you can do for your book, is get through the content, write your conclusion, and then go back and write your introduction and set the stage for everything they're going to read.
It's a really good tip.
Yeah.
I don't even I've never really written anything, and I already can tell wow, that would have helped me a lot in school or whatever.
I'm just imagining even essays, going back and saving your first paragraph for last. That makes so much sense. I don't know why no one's ever said that to me before. You're good at what you do, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I've just remembered a question I had from something you said. So you wrote your book before you started your business, before you launched it. So how did you go about marketing that book, since you didn't really have that platform for your business established yet? How would somebody who doesn't have a platform market their book for the first time?
Part of knowing who you're marketing to is knowing where they're staying, where they're living, where they're hanging out. So for my book, it's actually not in my niche anymore. I'm book to be delivered, I would say. But my first book is How to Write a Book, Memoirs and Autobiographies. So it's very specific on who it's targeting. And I knew I was targeting people in their 40s to 60s, roughly. I knew that they were active on Facebook, because that's the group that uses Facebook the most. And I knew they were probably hanging out in the first time writers. They were, hanging out in the back shadows. They were probably hanging out in groups of community building where they were sharing their stories actively already and engaging with each other. So that's where I started going. I started, I don't fit that demographic. I'm not of that age, but I started to insert myself in those communities, not as someone who was trying to sell myself, but as someone who had answers to their questions. And that's literally all I did. Was I just said, if someone would ask a question and be like, hey, this is a great, I would answer the question. And if they replied to me, we would get in a conversation in the DMs, and it would be very natural. But none of it was with the mindset of sell. It was all with add value. just add value to these groups, to these people's lives, and then they will come to you. They will see you as the resource. They will see your name continuing to pop up in these conversation threads, and they will say, oh my goodness, Larissa knows what she's talking about. I need to talk to her. And then you subtly drop the link to your book. Here's, if I answered your exact question in this book, you can grab it on Amazon for $3. So yeah, that's how I went about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's like you'd market anything. Add value is
the best way to do it.
Is the best way to do any business.
Mm-hmm.
So
and approaching it relationally is always good, because if they think you're selling something, they're automatically going to shut you out.
They have a different mindset on it.
Yeah, definitely. So did you do those things? Was it online largely, or did you actually go in person to places? I'm assuming it was online from what you were saying.
Yeah, it's online. It's definitely online. But I also, with this book, with the How to Write a Book, Memoirs and Autobiographies, I also knew that my local library was going to be really beneficial, because generally speaking, older people like libraries. And so I connected with my local library. We did a few book signings, a few writing coaching events of people that just wanted to learn more about the publishing world. So there was a little bit of in person, but my intention was never to sell to those. I'm an online service provider. I primarily work with people in the States, in the UK, in Canada. I just wanted to add value to my community. That's really all I was planning on doing there. I sold a couple copies of my book. I made some great relationships, but that wasn't my goal with those events.
That's really good. Mm-hmm. So then moving forward in the process, I guess, so I'm assuming the people that work with you do some self-editing of their books before having a professional edit them. What steps do you recommend they take for self-editing?
Self-editing is such a fun topic, and I'm really glad you asked that question, because I'm going through this in my course right now with someone. Once you write the book, a lot of times authors can think, oh my goodness, I'm done. I don't have to look at it again. And that's not true. You do have to pick your book back up at least one more time before you send it to a professional editor. You have to go through it once to make sure that your thoughts are coming out the way you want them to, that you have everything in there, because you'll read a section of your book and be like, oh, I forgot this, and you'll add it in. And you need to have that once over before you send it to an editor, because what I have done in the past is I will send my manuscript away, I'll get it back, I'll read through their edits, and then as I'm reading it, I'll be like, oh, I forgot to put this. And so I add, a page or two of content. Suddenly that content is no longer edited. My editor hasn't gone through it. So I'm either sending it back to them and, more money, more expenses, or I have to live with the fact that information isn't in there. So going through it one more time, at least one more time before you send it to an editor, is really, really important for time and money savings.
That's a really good point. And then I guess after editing, it's the publishing process. So how does somebody go about, do you recommend, I guess there's a couple questions here. One, how does somebody go about getting their book published? And two, do you lean more towards self-publishing, or do you think if somebody's writing a book for their business, they should go the traditional publishing route?
Yeah, so just for clarification, traditional publishing is when a publishing house buys the distribution rights to your book. So typically there's a payout of some sort to the author, and then they take over things like editing and the marketing and the publishing. Those deals are rare for debut authors. Not impossible, but rare. And the payout for debut authors is not very much. So if you're thinking a big fat check, no, that's not going to happen. And it's hard to get into. You need a literary agent in most cases, and then a publishing house has to actually buy your rights. And that can take years. I have heard of people querying for up to 10 years before they decide, no, this isn't for me, and they go the self-publishing route. Self-publishing is when you choose to do it all yourself. You are going to find and pay for editors. You're going to do the design. You're going to do the publishing. There is significant cost with that, with doing it yourself, but you are so much more in control. You get to say what your final manuscript look like. You get to do your cover design. You are in charge of your marketing plan, timelines. All of that comes back to you. So more and more people are waking up to the idea of self-publishing and warming up to it, because we like control. I like control. I want to know what's going in my book. I want to know when it's coming out. I want to know how it's being broadcasted to the world. I want control over that. So self-publishing is booming. It is huge industry right now. And because of that, these new companies are popping up called hybrid publishers. And I am a hybrid publisher. And what I do is I work with authors. I'm a hybrid publisher and a coach because I do a little bit of both. But I take authors who want to self-publish but don't know how. And they don't know how to find editors. They don't know how to do the designing portion of the book, and they need help. And so I take them through my team of editors. I take them through my designing programs. I take them through the marketing. Oh my goodness, the marketing for these poor self-published authors, even traditional published authors. It's, as entrepreneurs, we know it's exhausting. So having someone teach you how to market your book is invaluable. So I'm not, I don't promote one path over the other. It has to be what's right for the author and what they're willing to sacrifice or be in control of. If traditional publishing speaks to you and you're willing to wait years, go for it. That's great. If you're willing to query agents and you're willing to go through, possible submissions and rejection letters and you're good for that, go for it. If you want to be more in control but need some support, then hybrid's for you. If you are 100% willing to go through the learning curve, willing to find the editors, sometimes take the risk that they're of good quality, then go self. So that doesn't really answer your question, I know, but it's so personal. It's so personal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's because when you're self-publishing, it sounds kind of like you're almost starting a whole other business, and because you're having to do everything yourself, which is a lot of work. But then you have, like you said, that control where you're able to determine everything yourself. So I see how that would be something you'd have to decide for yourself. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Also, the amount of time, just the time factor too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm already running a business. Do I have time to control all this myself right now?
That's the hybrid publishing sounds really good because it combines those two worlds where they have someone helping them through the process, but there's still a little bit more of that control. So
Yeah, and what I find with the people I serve primarily is what they have planned for their book, the way they want to use it and market it. Hybrid publishing and self-publishing fit better because you're not selling the distribution rights. You're in control of all that. So if you want to give your book away for free, go for it. Traditional publishing usually doesn't allow for that.
okay, so then something else I would want to know, since you've been working with so many people and you've had experience not only with publishing, but coaching and all these different things, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned in your own entrepreneurial journey? Doesn't have to be about books. It could be about any part of the process. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned yourself?
Boundaries is the first thing that comes to mind. When I was 9 to 5, I had pretty good boundaries. I worked 9 to 5 and then I shut it off. I didn't look at my computer. I didn't open my emails, nothing. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, that was very different. And I'm sure you see that too. All of a sudden you're checking your emails first thing in the morning, you're glancing at them in the evenings, and you're working weekends. And I have a young family. I have a 5-year-old, I have a new puppy, I have a husband, I'm a student. It became very clear very quickly that if I didn't set healthy boundaries, I would not succeed. I would burn out and I would regret everything that I've done. So I started setting boundaries that were actually going to serve me. So I don't work Thursdays. I take every Thursday off and I spend the day with my daughter. I spring her out of daycare and we spend the day together. I don't work evenings and I don't work Sundays. So I have really clear boundaries in place to keep me creative, to keep me wanting to come back, to keep me passionate about what it is that I do and who I serve.
That makes a lot of sense. And
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something that is really hard to do,
Yes.
but so important to do.
I know that's something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if this is a silly question, but since we're on the topic of books, I was just wondering if there were any books you've read specifically that have impacted you as far as starting and growing your businesses.
There were 2 books that I read back to back. 1000 Awesome Things or something like that, by Neil Patarka. Sorry, I don't remember the name exactly. I can picture the cover perfectly. He has a blog called 1000 Awesome Things, and it started as a blog, and then he converted it into book 1 and book 2. And I really liked his method of storytelling. He had this way of telling a story throughout his entire book. Like, it was one story, but he had lessons in every chapter. So it appeased my mind of needing a story and needing continuity in the book, but also teaching me something in every chapter. So that book was really like, if this is what I can help people produce, that is the perfect brand versus story combination. And then the other book I read, and I'm sorry if this is foul language, but it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
That's what the book was called. Yeah, and that book to me, and this is again my opinion, I did not like that book. That book did not resonate with me at all. I actually stopped reading it about 2/3 of the way through, and I said, because I said, this isn't for me. This doesn't speak to my values and my beliefs. And what that book taught me, reading the 2 of them so close together, was that every book has a reader, because that second book is wildly popular. Like, it's an international bestseller. And I did not like it. And that was kind of my revelation of, how do I help people tell their story? It was the clarity of, your book is meant for someone, it is not meant for everyone. And getting over that mindset that you're trying to please everyone, you're trying to be the book that everyone turns to. That doesn't work that way. And just helping people understand that. So those 2 books, read back to back very early on in my, entrepreneurial career, were instrumental in how I knew I was going to move forward with my business.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. Something funny is, like, when Abby is reading a book and she loves it so much, she'll go on, is it Goodreads or whatever you go on? Yeah,
Goodreads.
And she'll see her friend gave it like a low rating, and she gets so mad.
I get
She's like, how did you not like this book? But it's so true that there's like 2 sides to, like,
different perspectives, different experiences that make people like different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, for a business owner, like, maybe somebody doesn't want to work with me because they don't like my personality, and that's just, their opinion. They have a right to that opinion. So that makes a lot of sense, with knowing that your book is for someone, not everyone. But that's actually, I think that would take pressure off, like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about trying to please everybody with this and how I present my service, because I know it's just for a specific person. So I really like that.
Yeah, and it helps a lot with reviews. And reviews, I want to be really clear with any aspiring authors that are listening. Reviews are not meant for the author. They are meant for other readers. And when I wrote my sci-fi book, I didn't know that. I got really wrapped up in the reviews, and the 5-star reviews would come in and I'd feel really good. And then the lower stars review would come in and be like, oh my God, it's a horrible book. I never should have published it. And what I learned really quickly was, that person that left the low review, either they might have been having a bad day, they might have been in a bad spot in their life, or the book just wasn't meant for them. It wasn't their cup of tea. It didn't mean my book was bad. It didn't mean I needed to go back and make changes. It didn't mean I never should have written it. It just meant it wasn't for that person. If I could leave your listeners with some motivation, would be that everyone does have a story in them. Not every story needs to be told. Some things are meant to be personal. Some things are meant to be just for you. But if you are looking to grow your brand, the best way to do it is through storytelling, to find that thing inside of you that's going to connect you with your audience on a deeper level. And if you're looking to make connections longer than, like, what we talked about, social media posts or blog posts or vlogs, whatever you're using right now, nothing will do it like a book does it.
Yeah, that's very true. And if somebody wanted to work with you or connect with you, what are the best ways they can do that?
Yeah, you can find me at larissasoehn.coach. That will give you a brief introduction to my programs and a link to book a call with me. And that's what I always encourage people to do, is book a call with me so that we can talk and make sure a book is the right fit for you and your business, and make sure that I'm the right person to guide you on that journey.
Awesome. And then last question, what are the titles of all your books?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have 3 children's books. Mummy is Having a Sad Day, The Never Ending Why, and Candy Kerfuffle.
Oh, that sounds.
And then I have, and they're all kind of social issues books. So the Mummy's Having a Sad Day is depression in mothers. Candy Kerfuffle is a racial integration type book. And The Never Ending Why is literally just dealing with the never ending why of children and how frustrating that can be. So those are my 3 children's books. I have The Defender, which is more of a light read sci-fi book if you're just looking for some escapism and you want to relate to a character who is very much a mother and feels very much stuck in her life, and then goes on to save an entire galaxy, of course. And then there is How to Write a Book, Memoirs and Autobiographies. And that book, while it is coined for memoirs and autobiographies, is really great for anybody looking to write a book because it looks at all the phases of the publishing world.
Awesome. And did you say you were working on one more?
Yes. Oh, I'm working on many, many more. It's never ending. So the second book, The Defender, is supposed to come out later this year. And then my second business book, How to Write a Book to Grow Your Business, is supposed to be out later this year as well. And I always say supposed to because I don't like to put pressure on myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to make commitments that I can't keep. So maybe later this year.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
That sounds great. Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Palikari Business Podcast. For more information about our guest, check out the links in the show notes. To connect with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok under the handle Hammond Cinematography, or just search Nick Hammond on YouTube. Nick and I are the founders of Hammond Cinematography, a video production company located in the Central Valley of California. If you'd like more information about us and our business, you can check out our website linked in the show notes. We'll see you next time.